All right, everybody, smile. We're being recorded. Thanks for joining Michelle and Jason from Solaredge. Really looking forward to what you guys have to share here. Everybody who's in the audience right now, feel free to use the Q&A. If you have any questions, myself and Brandon and Danny will be there to help answer those questions and ask them live. We're going to let Solaredge take it away here, kind of share what they've got coming and what they're working on as far as NEM 3.0. It's going to be an exciting time. I think the more you know, knowledge is power is going to be a very true statement in the next few weeks coming. And so very excited to see what's going on here and what you guys got. We'll have a little bit of time for Q&A towards the end of the session. This will also be recorded. We'll also get the deck, and we will send that out and post it live for everybody to look back on or share it with the rest of your teams. My name's Andy Schwartz. This is Danny O'Malley. And then we've got Brandon Barton on here from ESP. We look forward to seeing what we got. Take it away, Michelle. Let's see what's going on.
Yeah, great. I actually just did a training and I was asking the group, how excited and or comfortable are we in NEM 3 coming? And I would say it was on a scale of 1 to 10, it was like 5 to 10. So that feels good because I feel that way too. I feel like I'm maybe a 9. I'm kind of excited about it, want to get this group thinking about it. And what I would just request for the sales team is, this is really a mindset shift. It's a paradigm shift. And so as we're going through this, let's just keep an open mind of how we can leverage this new dynamic and what that new world's going to look like. Because there might be some things that we tend to do now that are going to shift a little bit in this new world. So I like to level set on where we're at in terms of time of use rates right now, just in terms of what we're paying. So NEM 3 is going to hit the big 3, PG&E, SCE, SDG&E. And these are the rates that we're paying currently. So of course, we're on these on peak, super off peak, but in general, and these have just gone up. So in some areas, this can be as high as 70 to 75 cents right now. And we're paying in general on average, 50 cents for those peak times. So just let's level set there, because when we look at the export rates as they are in NEM 3, it's going to illustrate a bit of a different story. So here's the highlights in terms of what's coming down the pipe. So the big thing in NEM 3 is the export rates. They're going to be based on hourly values, different every month, weekends versus weekdays. So almost every single hour of the day, even if it's depending on if it's a weekend versus weekday, we're going to be paying it, or we're going to be receiving a different export rate for the energy we're sending back to the grid. This is a big thing in terms of expectation setting. So true up bills are going to be monthly, not annually. So a lot of us are talking about annual true ups. If your homeowners are owing things at the end of the month, they will owe that moving forward in NEM 3. Oversizing is permitted by no more than 50% of previous 12 months of usage. So your homeowners will be able to oversize their system 150%, essentially offsetting their utility bill. And then the most important thing, the deadline for NEM 2 is April 14th. I think this team's cutoff date is end of March. So you still have a little bit of time in that solar gold rush to get people into NEM 2. But my goal today is let's think about what happens post NEM 3 so that we're prepared for that conversation and the expectations we're setting. So here's that monthly true up piece. So think about this. If you have a homeowner that's installing between the months of October through March, a lot of times this is when they're going to be owing a little bit of money, because of course we know it's a bell curve with solar, right? So these are the months that you're producing less. Usually that's offset by the summer months where you're producing more. In that first year, if they're being installed in these months, they might owe a little bit on their utility bill. So that's just something to set the expectation for the homeowners with. Year one savings is going to be different than the following years, because the good news is they actually will roll over these credits to the following year. So it's really just going to be year one savings that they're impacted on. Okay, so let's cover some NEM 3 scenarios. Let's say that we're in NEM 3 now, and we have these different scenarios. So the homeowner has a home hub inverter, and then now just wants to add a battery to the existing system. So they're a NEM 2 customer. They want to add a battery to an existing system. Do they get grandfathered in into NEM 2, or are they going to be pushed into NEM 3? That's the big question, right? So the answer is they're going to be grandfathered into NEM 2. They can add a battery, add a backup interface to an existing system, and they'll be grandfathered in. One of the pieces with NEM 3 is utility companies want our homeowners to add batteries, because what does it mean for the utility companies? It means eventually they're going to be able to leverage those batteries to draw from those batteries at the high demand times of day for the utility. So more batteries on the grid, the better, because they'll be able to draw from those batteries at some point. Okay, so here's the second example. Homeowner has an HD wave. So this is a solar only inverter. They weren't set up for future readiness, flexibility, and they want to add a battery. Do they get grandfathered into NEM 2, or do they get pushed into NEM 3? This one's easy too. So the good news is that homeowner can swap out the inverter with the home hub, because the home hub is that battery inverter, right? If it's the same size, they'll be able to swap it out, add a battery, add that backup interface. They'll still be in NEM 2. So these two scenarios, as long as that inverter stays the same size, they will be in NEM 2. This one's the tougher one. Homeowner has a home hub or an HD wave and wants to expand their system and add a battery. So if they're expanding their system, then they are putting a new inverter in. So if they're putting a new inverter in, a bigger inverter, they will be pushed into NEM 3. Okay, if they get in before the April deadline, or they're keeping their same inverter, they won't be pushed into NEM 3. So it's really, if they're upgrading to a larger inverter, they'll be moved to NEM 3. So those are some scenarios we're running into right now, the questions we're getting. So here's that crazy export rate example. This just happens to be PG&E on the weekend. So this isn't, and think about it, there's 6 different tables. There's PG&E weekday weekend, SCE weekday weekend, SDG&E weekday weekend. So if you look at this, and remember we were looking at the time of use earlier, we're paying on average 50 cents a kilowatt hour. If you look at this table, your homeowners will be getting back on average 5 cents a kilowatt hour for their energy that they're exporting. So what does this mean? Do we actually want to export that energy? The answer is no. So we don't want to export that energy anymore. We want your homeowners to become their own power plant, be able to leverage a battery solution in order to power their home. One quick thing here, you'll notice there's 2 hours in September where the homeowner is actually going to be getting a bounty for their electricity, $3 a kilowatt hour. So what we want the homeowners to be able to do is, let's just discharge our battery. Let's dump our battery in those 2 hours so that they can actually make money on the utility company. So that's what we're going to be going into when we're talking about NEM 3. Every system's going to have a battery on it, and we want to be able to leverage those high export times to dump our battery when we need to. Okay.
Hey, Michelle, real quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a chart like this for Edison or San Diego Gas and Electric yet? Have you seen one?
Yeah, so I do have them. They are adjusting them for daylight savings, I guess, just in a minor way. But I can send over the Edison and the SDG&E ones as well. They're very similar. All of them are really similar in terms of the export rates.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Hmm. Okay, so in this case, now, if you think about it, it's really hard to even track return on investment if we're thinking about exporting at any given hour. But the thing is they're not even, homeowners are not going to be getting an advantageous export rate for their utility or their electricity at any time except for that September months. So the answer is really batteries. And what we think about is, now this is the paradigm shift. Open your mind, everybody. There's going to be two types of homeowners after NEM 3. Okay. I like to think of it as batteries for bill savings or batteries for backup power. So, batteries for bill savings, think about it as homeowner has low risk of outages. They're focused on going solar for bill savings, and they will use the batteries for self consumption on a daily basis. So this is kind of right now, I like to think about it as those solar only customers that we're running into, right? The homeowners that are just really interested in controlling their utility rates, predictable bills, and saving money. So this is a profile that is not changing. We're running into this guy every day, except it's solar only right now. And this is now going to be batteries for bill savings. I have some models to wrap your head around it. But then we have the batteries for backup power. So this is our normal battery customer right now, right? They need backup power in an outage. We have a lot of homeowners right now that have outage challenges in California. They're focused on safety, control, and predictability, less focused on savings, but they're also going to be able to leverage their battery for self-consumption. Okay, so to me, those are the two profiles, whether it's batteries for bill savings or battery for backup power. So what that means is we have three options now in a NEM 3 paradigm shift. I like to think of it as good, better, best, but you can think of this as premium, mid-range, and cost saver. Okay, so let's talk about premium first. Those homeowners that really want full home backup. They need full home backup power. And how many batteries can we add to a home with a Solaredge system if we really wanted to? What's the maximum amount of batteries? You can use the Q&A box if you want to be a smarty pants. It's 9 batteries per home if we really wanted to. So we have the option of full home backup. Then we have essential home backup. This is more of our homeowners, right? If they need backup power, but they only want essential loads. My favorite question to ask homeowners is, tell me about the outage last time. What was most uncomfortable in that outage last time? That will allow you to create a list of things that that homeowner wants to prioritize for backup. So you'll be able to determine, is it essential loads? Is it full home? Is it partial home? Okay. So those are the two for backup. Then we have what we're calling the new paradigm shift, the rate saver. This is your new solar only system. This is for your homeowners that do not need backup power. No backup. Can be added at a later time, but this is no backup power. They're just going to leverage this battery for arbitrage, for self-consumption. Because remember, we don't want to throw it back to the grid because we're not making money on that anymore, or we're not getting a 1-to-1 ratio on export. Instead, we want to store it and we want to discharge that battery during those peak times. So this is our new solar only solution. Let's look at an example. Well, let's first, this is the next question I usually get. Why would we want to install a battery without backup capabilities, right? The interesting thing is, if we're installing a battery for self-consumption only, we are now removing the most expensive part of a battery installation. Because the most expensive part of a battery install is setting it up for backup. that critical loads panel, the backup interface, the extra time it needs for installation of that backup. So if we remove that, we actually see it as a more cost-effective option. It's a better payback for your homeowners. So this is considered the low-cost option for regions with a lower probability for blackouts. In our modeling, we're seeing this is about 38% less in cost than a backup solution, because we're not talking about a critical loads, backup interface, et cetera. So this homeowner can add backup capabilities in the future if they want. Let's look at just another side by side. This is an example. So this is not, this is based on the 8 kW system, 25-year loan term. So this is not set in stone for every single homeowner. It's really an illustration of what is happening here. Monthly electric bill, $225 with no solar. So this is that homeowner that wants to, you know, stay with their electricity company. This is after NEM 3. If they go solar only, they're going to save a little bit. It's going to be about 20% savings from that electricity bill. So maybe it'll be 180, assuming that they're able to leverage and still get some savings from going solar. But let's take a look at that rate saver. So this is the new solution, right? This is the solar only solution essentially for NEM 3. They're actually going to be saving more than going solar only if they have a battery. So this is the rate saver solution without backup power, where we're seeing about 55% savings over doing nothing. Okay, this is usually when the brain starts exploding. So I want to take one pause and see, because believe me, my brain exploded too at this point, because we have always thought batteries are the expensive part, right, of solar. We can't save money usually with batteries. This is, in this new paradigm, this is how it's going to be, where we will be saving money for homeowners that leverage their battery.
It's really true, Michelle. I always like to say, kind of as we're thinking about this new phase of solar and storage that we're running into, is this is basically what every homeowner currently already thinks solar works. Most homeowners, you walk into their house and they're like, oh yeah, so when the power goes out, everything will be fine. And or, you know, I'm going to be off grid.
Mm-hmm.
And we're actually heading down that path of what most homeowner thinks out there right now. And so this is a very easy transition in my eyes, because you can ask your homeowner, like, hey, what do you think this is going to do? What do you think is going to happen here? And they're going to tell you exactly what we're now doing, which is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the only differentiated piece here is, remember, this rate saver does not have power in an outage either. So but I totally agree with you, Andy. Like, if I were coming into this and selling batteries today, I would lead with a backup situation, right? Because to your point, homeowners assume that's what happens anyways. Let's just give them what they want, right?
Yep.
And then when the homeowner says, well, I don't have that many outages, is there anything I can do that's more cost effective? You'll then pare it down to say, yes, we have that rate saver, which won't give you outage support, but will allow you to leverage your battery to offset the peak energy rates, right? So I see some questions. So great point. I figured there'd be questions. Okay, so our battery is going to be mandatory. And then Jason, if you have answered some questions that we want to answer publicly, please just get off of mute and we'll make sure we address those. I saw you
sure. Thanks, Michelle. So we did answer a couple questions in that came in. For instance, one question was, are batteries going to be mandatory to add on to solar with NEM 3.0? So the answer to that question is not mandatory, but we do think that they're going to be, the large majority of systems sold will include batteries, because obviously now the cost that a homeowner is going to get in sending power back to the grid for export credits is about 75% less. And so we're going to be now in more of a self-consumption market, where we want to consume all the power that we produce versus obviously sell it back to the grid.
Yep.
I see a couple other questions on here that are kind of tied together. Michelle, can you elaborate on the the number that we came to there? Like for instance, $100 there on the screen for the rate saver. Is that a cash deal? Is that
yeah? So remember, this
that?
is just I would definitely focus more on the percentage, less on the number, just because you know that we all sell at different prices. But this is here's the caveat: is it's based on an 8 kW system over a 25-year loan term. We used it and compared it to one of our common customers using the right arbitrage feature in our tool. The good news here is the standard tools out there that are being used for building and designing systems are going to have these features fully integrated into them to ensure that you know the savings on your side. So I would focus a lot more on this slide just on the percentages of savings. Okay, just looking real quick back at the questions. I saw one up here that I wanted to make sure we were answering. When installing PV and battery, what offset are we trying to accomplish? Great question. And I would defer to Andy and Danny on this too. But when I was selling, it was always my rule of thumb that I was offsetting like 110 to 115% if the homeowner had a battery on their site, assuming that they told me that their 12 months of usage wasn't going to change very much over the next 12 months. Of course, in California, we're running into everybody getting electric vehicles and things like that. So if their utility usage is going to change, it might be advantageous to offset even more. But just as a rule of thumb, to ensure we can charge the battery and still offset all of their bill, I always just did 110 to 115, assuming roof space. Do you guys have a different rule of thumb on your side?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. That might be a question more for our ops guys. But what I mean, you've kind of touched on something that I did want to bring up, and this is kind of again the mindset shift of are they going to be primarily self-consumption because they work from home? So like myself, I'm home all day. I'm running lights all day. I'm doing everything all day. So in that scenario, I'm already going to be using as much of the solar generated as possible. And as opposed to somebody that, works a 9 to 5 or, works, who knows, works graveyards or something like that. So that's going to mean another type of shift on how we size the system. And it's really, we are working on tools in QuickBase that are going to help make the strongest recommendation for the homeowner. So back to the earlier question, are batteries mandatory? No, but they're going to be strong recommendations depending on kind of the customer's behavior, essentially. And yeah, if they say, oh, I'm going to be working from home or I'm going back to the office, okay, that kind of, trigger that in your mind of we should design it a specific way.
And just to add on that, I think to simplify things, and this is going to be in total general terms here, if you look at what we've done in NEM 2.0 and previously, we kind of use the grid like a battery. We would send back any excess power that the home was not using in that moment in time. We'd send it back to the grid. We would get credits for it, and then we would use it in these peak hours. And so we're really still doing the same thing, particularly with this rate saver option here. The only difference now is that we put a battery on the wall instead of using the grid as the battery, and we charge that battery throughout the daytime with whatever power is not being used in the home. And then we discharge it later in the day from 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock onwards. So I think to kind of keep things simple, that's a great way of kind of understanding this transition is instead of using the grid as a battery, developing credits over time, we're using an actual battery to basically offset those high peak rates where the solar is not producing power.
Yeah, and I do see on here somebody that's definitely struggling to wrap their head around how is solar only more expensive than adding that battery system, because we have not thought about that in the past. So think about this: they're not buying back that energy at the 1-to-1 ratio anymore. So if you are exporting, then you are exporting at the rate of 5 cents a kilowatt hour when you're paying 55 cents a kilowatt hour. And so you're not getting that value anymore. Instead, what we're going to do is store the energy in the battery, discharge it at that high rate, so that you're able to power your home with the battery instead of exporting it, because you're not getting that value anymore. So let's see.
Yeah,
I
I saw
think
something in the chat here about
the offset question keeps popping up, guys. And I think there's two different ways to look at offset, right? There's going to be bill offset and there's going to be usage offset. And so it's going to depend on lifestyle and your homeowner. Like Danny had mentioned, like who's going to be home, who's not going to be home. One of the biggest things that's going to change in the sales world is going to be the discovery questions that you ask about how your homeowners use electricity. And that's going to drive you towards a solution that makes the most sense, right? So if they're a care customer, I've seen a couple in there, if that's going to be mandatory or necessary for batteries, their buyback rate is going to be higher across the board on the IOUs, the investor-owned utilities that are being affected by this. And maybe I'm jumping ahead, Michelle and Jason, but it's going to be a good conversation to have with your customers, because this bill that's being passed, the NEM 3 bill that is passed, that comes into play, is actually going to support care customers. And I saw a couple questions out there about that. So you may want to look at those customers in a different light. And it's going to be about the discovery questions that you ask along the way to find out how their lifestyle is and how they're going to be using electricity. Hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah, great point. Just going to look one more time at these questions to make sure we're keeping up here. And I think we're going to answer
in there. Yeah, I think you could probably cover this, but I'll just go ahead and answer it now, Michelle. There's a question in there about a 3 kW battery instead of a 10 kW. So the numbers that we're talking about here with a 10 kW battery, if you think about the general home, solar stops producing, let's say 4 to 5 p.m. on most days. And so a 3 kW battery would likely not be enough energy to power that home in those peak rates. And so typically we'll see a minimum of 110 kilowatt hour battery. Some will have 2 potentially there.
Yep. I see some questions on warranties that I want to make sure we cover. So warranty on the battery is 10 years, but it's 10 years. We guarantee 70% capacity left on that battery. So it's not that in 10 years, that battery is going to die, right? We guarantee 70% capacity left on that battery. And so that usable life is going to be longer than that. We also have unlimited cycles, which is really important for this type of model, because it allows your homeowner to charge and discharge on a daily basis without any limit. So that is really important to note on the warranty piece. All right. I did get a question on here about, so would in the rate saver solution, would one battery power the whole home for that system? And so typically what we see is, and again, back to Danny's point of, it's really based on the homeowner's usage and their profile. Are they using a ton of energy at night? If they're using a ton of energy at night, they may need more than one battery for arbitrage. What we find is that usually one battery over the nighttime hours is going to sustain that home. And obviously they're still tied into the grid. And so they're going to discharge their battery. They can drain that to 100%. We have 100% depth of discharge at night. And then if they had to pull from the grid, they would. But typically we see, because usage is lower at night, that one battery will sustain those nighttime hours. Okay, so pricing of a battery is really based on what the company themselves decides to price it at. And so I will defer to the team on that. Profile program in the system. So the installer will typically program the profile that your homeowners are going to be set to. Maximize self-consumption would be what we would want in NEM 3 markets, because that'll allow it to automatically discharge at the most advantageous times of the day. Okay, last question I'll address right now is the mounting location of the inverter and battery have an impact on the life and capacity inverter in indoor versus outdoor. So it's still going to be warranted for the time that we have on the warranties. Of course, on the outdoor installation of batteries specifically, it does have an operating temperature of 14 degrees to 122 degrees. So if you're in an environment with high strain, essentially what that would mean is, that's what it's warranted under, 14 degrees to 122. It may be operating at a lower rate if it goes with outside of those parameters. So rule of thumb is always, garage is going to be the best case scenario, but especially in California, when we have temperate, climate, there's a lot of places that outdoor is totally fine. Okay. Gosh, there's such great questions coming through. I want to make sure that we cover them. So Yasmin, do we have to install a sub panel every time they get a battery? So in the rate saver solution, no. Because this is literally just, allowing them to maximize self-consumption. They wouldn't have backup power. So you don't need a sub panel in this case. If that homeowner wants backup power, then yes, they do need a sub panel. Steve, why is one battery more expensive than two batteries? And it's because in this case, how you're pricing it out right now includes all of the backup capabilities and equipment associated with it. So say you have one battery, that includes the backup interface, the critical loads panel, labor, all of that. Whereas when you're adding a second battery, that's already included in the first one. So that's why it's less expensive for that second battery on that side.
Yeah, just to add on to that too, I think, as we make this transition and we start, looking at NEM 3.0 and selling more batteries, I think it's going to be really important to consider sort of how we use the term battery. Historically, we've talked about batteries as a backup solution, and we're kind of migrating into a world now where the battery is more of a different solution where it allows you to self-consume more solar energy versus sell it back to the grid. So I like to think of the battery as more of like a bucket of solar energy, in these kind of cases, to keep it more simplified, if you will. So we're basically charging the battery with any solar energy that's not consumed throughout the day. So that bucket of energy is there and available in these peak rates. I'm paying 55 cents a kilowatt hour. That bucket of energy that we charge the battery up throughout the day can now be used to offset those peak rates versus, buying power from the grid. So it's important to kind of change the mindset, I think, of a battery as only a backup device, but also as a backup device in one scenario and as I'm calling a solar bucket of energy, if that makes sense.
Yep, that's those two customer profiles, and definitely. So just to reiterate, because we're still getting questions in the chat about it, this rate saver solution will not provide power in an outage. This is going to be really strictly for the maximum savings for your homeowner in a NEM 3 environment. If that homeowner does need power in an outage, we do of course have that capability. It's just going to be it's going to be what you're selling right now in terms of a battery system. So if you are already selling a battery system on a lot of your deals, then that's going to be really the same kind of package you would be selling. This is really the solar only solution that's coming in at NEM 3. Okay, so the big question is, how do we simplify NEM 3 for homeowners? Because let's talk about, we're in a NEM 3 paradigm now. If you have been on any of these trainings about NEM 3, I like to start with an elevator pitch. Usually this is what I would use, like right at bill review. You know, I want to open it up at bill review with an elevator pitch to simplify it. So as we're going into NEM 3, let's talk about how we have this discussion in April. This is how I would do it. So I would say, let's take a look at your utility bill and talk about how you pay for electricity now and how that changes when you go solar. Mr. Homeowner, what's your understanding of California solar policy today? So we want a level set. We want to have the homeowner tell us what their understanding is. And then we'll continue with our elevator pitch. When you go solar, you can send excess solar power back to the grid and receive credits from the utility company. It's called net metering. For California, as well as several other states, sending solar production back to the grid is no longer a benefit. The utility company will value the power you send back to them at about 75% less than what they're actually charging you for that power. Pretty frustrating, right? The good news is we have an option for you to become your own power plant. This gives you more control and predictability over your electricity bill and will allow you to store the solar power you produce during the day instead of sending it back to the utility. At night, you will use that stored energy to power your home. So that's how I would simplify it. And this really pertains to that rate saver program where, you know, if they're just a solar only solution, this is what they would have. If, of course, you are selling them a battery solution where they have power in an outage, we could also add the value here to say, at night, you will use that stored energy to power your home, and you'll have power in an outage if that happens. So, you know, we'll have an additional added benefit for power in an outage scenario.
Great questions. Love this. This is going to be a huge part of what everybody on this call is going to be doing in the home is asking the right questions to your homeowners. Good stuff.
Yeah, and I think that Jason is answering them as well, and we will make sure to go back to these Q&As. I'm almost through this piece. So this is something I like this illustration to really illustrate this to homeowners on how this is going to interact. So in those off-peak rates during the day, right, we are have the peak solar production during the day. We're going to charge that battery and power the house. And then during those high peak rates, your system's going to automatically transition to pull from that battery so that you're not paying those high peak rates. So we were actually going to power the home with the battery. And then during the time of the off peak rates overnight, you're going to continue powering the home with the battery so that you're really not pulling from the grid at all. So this allows you to, in the morning, you know, do the same thing. We're going to run the house on solar and charge the battery, and then it's going to start over again. So this is, you know, how I would explain to homeowners how they're kind of becoming their own power plant instead of relying on the utility company and sending it back. John, this is such a great question. I'm so glad you asked it. So with the power in an outage scenario, are we still going to be able to draw from the battery at night or during peak hours? Absolutely. Okay, so this allows your homeowners to not only have power in an outage, but also leverage that battery during the peak time. So definitely we'll be able to do that. And this is that piece. So if that homeowner has the need for home backup, then you can offer that solution to the homeowner as well. We'll be able to back up either essential loads, full home. And then I think this team knows about WeatherGuard, but WeatherGuard is an automatic charge to the battery. So we actually pull all of the weather satellites in the area and will automatically charge the battery to full capacity before a storm hits. Now, it's not as dramatic as this picture in a lot of, except for this week, apparently in California. But we also have to deal with high winds in California a lot, right? And that's usually when our power goes out because the utility will turn off our power so that they avoid starting wildfires, right, during high wind times. This WeatherGuard will actually pull for high winds as well. So it does automatically charge the battery for that as well.
Hey, Michelle, real quick, can you touch on essential loads, essential backup real quick, just to give everybody kind of an idea of what that means and what it doesn't mean.
Yeah. So essential loads would be 8 to 10 smaller critical circuits in the house. A lot of times for a one battery system, that's what we're backing up. So if I ask that homeowner what was most uncomfortable last time there was an outage, and they tell me, well, all the food went bad in the fridge.
Mm-hmm.
My kids were driving me nuts because it was pitch black. They didn't have any devices they could play with. They didn't have any Wi-Fi. They didn't have any lights. This is telling me, okay, this homeowner sounds like they want essential backup. They want 8 to 10 critical circuits in the house that will be backed up by one battery. And then if we're talking about a homeowner that says, well, I want to back up my full heating and air conditioning unit, or I want to back up a well pump, heavier loads, things that draw heavier stuff, or washer dryer. I still don't know why anybody wants to do the laundry in an outage, but some people want to back up their dryer, right? So those are all things that are heavier loads. We'd need 2 batteries, 3 batteries in that case. If that homeowner just wants the smaller stuff in their house and it's like 8 to 10 circuits, then that's an essential backup, 1 battery.
Cool. So if I heard that correctly, if someone wanted to back up their air conditioner, it would be definitely more than 1 battery.
Yes.
Maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe more.
Yeah. Yeah. If it's like a 5-ton AC unit, it's definitely 3 or more. 3-ton AC, assuming the homeowner is using it conservatively, we've been able to back up on 2 batteries. But of course, if they're putting it down to 65 degrees and stuff, it's just going to drain it faster. I always, with homeowners, like to equate it to our cell phone. So if you're texting and using your phone for phone calls, that battery is going to drain a lot slower than if you're using it to stream a video, right? So that's kind of the same thing in this case. If you're using really heavy loads like an air conditioner, it's going to drain that battery faster than if you're just using the smaller stuff like fridges and lights. Yep.
Good stuff.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so before we jump into some of the advantages of the Solaredge battery as it pertains to NEM 3, I'm going to check back at the questions. Jason, was there anything else we wanted to make sure that we addressed? Looks like we answered some.
Yeah, there's a fair amount of questions still on the usage side and how to size the system. So maybe maybe you roll through this piece here, and then we'll get to that here in a second.
Okay.
And then we'll probably
Great.
want to cover the difference again between backup versus non-backup.
Okay, perfect. So Solaredge has a full ecosystem of products. When we're walking into NEM 3, it's going to be important that we're all utilizing a fully compatible ecosystem, because what happens here is all of these components talk to each other. They make intelligent decisions for that homeowner on, should we be charging the battery? Should we be pushing it into the house? Should we be charging the EV with an EV charger? That type of thing. And so your homeowners can manage and track all of this on one app. So it's really helpful to have a full ecosystem that works together. It also is helpful because they are avoiding what we're dramatically calling the triple conversion penalty. So with Solaredge, you have 1 conversion of energy before you use it in the house, because all of our devices are sitting on that DC side of the solar system. So you can, of course, we're using alternating current in the house, right? You can actually use that energy after 1 conversion with a Solaredge system. If we're talking about a microinverter solution or an AC coupled solution, you're actually having to convert that energy 3 times before it's usable in the home. So what that equates to is a more efficient system on our side. If your homeowner is charging and discharging that battery on a daily basis, which of course we are in NEM 3, this is actually going to equate to about 10 extra days of power from that battery, just with a higher efficiency system. Somebody mentioned main panel upgrades on here. And so this is one of the ways we are avoiding main panel upgrades. I'm sure this team, as we're walking in to NEM 3, the last thing we want is more main panel upgrades alongside our battery installations. So we actually can avoid main panel upgrades because we are attaching all of our smart energy devices into the inverter. The inverter is what is sharing breaker space with all of these smart energy devices, including batteries, solar system, and EV chargers. And then we are taking up one breaker space within that main service panel. So that inverter is the one that is taking up that space. In an AC coupled solution, each of these items are working independently. So this really a lot of times is like 80 to 100 amps required on an AC coupled solution versus 40 to 60 amps required on a Solaredge solution. Let's say it's a 8 or 9 kW system. So this allows us to avoid more main panel upgrades in this case. So the battery, the PV, and the EV all take up separate space in an AC coupled solution.
I think this is going to be a huge advantage for all those on the call out there. You know, when you look at obviously the predominant competitor out there, the microinverter business out there, they're going to be capped. Like on a 40 amp breaker, for instance, they might only be able to put 9 or 9.5 kW on there. Because we share the same exact breaker there, we can build a lot larger systems, which can make you anywhere from, depending on the cost out there, $3,000 to $4,000 potentially more cost effective by avoiding that main panel upgrade. So as we see system cost increases with batteries and some of those things, this could really help make you more competitive out there.
Yeah, there's really good questions in here about, you're totally right. Who was it? I just want to shout him out because he's so smart. About the main panel upgrades being avoided on 100 amp, 100 amp service panel. So if that homeowner has a 100 amp service panel and they need an 11 kW system, like your example, they would still need a main panel upgrade. 100 amp service is a little baby main panel. And so, yeah, they would need a main panel upgrade. We're able to avoid more main panel upgrades. You know, let's say 30 to 50% of the systems we're looking at. So that, you know, definitely is an advantage on our side. So I wanted to talk about these, what I'm calling power hours, and leveraging. We mentioned earlier, there's 2 hours in September where your homeowners are getting a bounty for just dumping their battery at that time. This is a really big advantage with Solaredge because we have a continuous power rating of 5 kW. What this means is your homeowners can actually drain their full battery, 10 kilowatt hours worth of that battery in those 2 hours. This is what's considered a 2-hour battery. So we can actually discharge that full 10 kilowatt hours at that time. If we're looking at the microinverter solution on the market right now, same size battery, a smaller continuous power. So what that means is they can only discharge 7.6 during that time. For your homeowners, this equates to about $200 more in September for your homeowners that are draining that battery at that time. So these 2 hours are going to be really advantageous. We've seen that it's going to make your homeowners about $1,000 to $1,200 during those power hours, because if they're discharging every day in September during those 2 hours, they're actually making money from the utility company. So very cool feature. I will say a benefit of NEM 3. We're all looking for benefits in NEM 3, right?
2 hours.
2 hours. Yep, they gave us 2 hours. 2 hours every day in September.
Every day in September.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So a couple advantages, just an advantage side by side before we get to the rest of the Q&A. Couple of reminders here. Continuous power rating is important because we can make your homeowners more money during those power hours. And we can also, if that homeowner is going with the power in and outage solution, the backup solution, we can actually back up 30% more things in the house than our competition. Round trip efficiency equates to about 10 days of free power for your homeowners if they're going with our battery over the competition. That warranty period, so unlimited cycles, remember, on our warranty is really important because we want that homeowner to charge and discharge on a daily basis. We can stack up to 3 batteries per inverter and up to 9 batteries per house. So 3 inverters if we needed it, up to 3 batteries per inverter. and we can store excess power into the battery. So if there's any energy that may be lost on the solar system due to overproduction, which does happen in the summer times a lot, we can actually take that DC power and charge the battery with it. So we're not losing that energy anymore. It's a big advantage with a battery system. We can actually charge from that clipped power. Okay. Last thing I have too is the My Solaredge app. If you want to see what this interaction is with your homeowners, download this app on your own phone. I would highly recommend doing that because you don't need a login at all to see the demo sites on that app. You'll be able to see that interaction, how much solar is producing, where that energy is going. And there are real sites on our app. So you can actually watch those. As you see at night, if your homeowners are set up to discharge, you're going to see them actually discharge that battery into the home so that their home is being powered from that battery, and it will tell them approximately how much usable life they have left on that battery. Okay. Last thing, QR code. We have some resources for NEM 3. We have a pitch deck, a one-pager, FAQs, that type of thing to make it easier for you to have this conversation with homeowners. So take a look at those. There's that QR code. I'm going to get back to the Q&A here real quick. Yeah, so Brandon, in the profile, the homeowner will have the capability to dump that battery during those power hours because we want them to be able to make that money, become their own power plant, be able to drain their battery back to the utility and make money on it. Yeah, so Ryan, just on top of that, they won't have to remember to do that daily. It's going to be programmed into the app to maximize their time.
You have a good question here. Does the battery backup allow for islanding in case of multiple day outages? So the answer to that is yes. Obviously, a backup system would need to be ordered by the homeowner, but the system is capable of doing what we call dark start, where if, for instance, as we walk into another big, storm event here in California, if the homeowner is offline from the grid for 2 days, 3 days, the system is able to start up in the morning and start powering the house there. So absolutely, yes.
I think it's important to note here, not all batteries are created equal here, I think. And so some of the solutions that are going to be offered are going to be better than the others, meaning the ability to discharge, the ability to dump, the ability to set it up so that you don't have to do it every single time on your own. The apps will be in control of a lot of what you do and how you set it up and configure it. And I saw that question come into the chat a few different times, which is who's going to be setting this thing up? And that's going to be, us, the installer, and or with the support of Solaredge as well, to get your homeowner to fully understand what the capabilities are in this new battery world.
One thing I want to comment on real quickly too, as we look at this transition, I think there's a lot of questions on what this is going to look like from a selling environment. And I think it's important to kind of remind yourself out there that, you're basically selling in these different concepts and products, if you will, that we're presenting here. You're selling the same option that you would today, essentially. If the homeowner is in a situation where they're not experiencing power outages, then the rate saver solution is perfect. If they are in places where they're getting impacted by outages, then the backup system would be ideal for them as well. So I think that's really important to consider there as we have these conversations with the homeowner, because we're really not changing a lot of the conversation. We're kind of just changing sort of what products that we actually install, if that makes any sense there.
Yep. Really good stuff there, Jason. The questions we ask, the discovery that we do in the home is going to help drive the best solution that we offer to our customers. Good stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say, just to kind of tag back onto that. Absolutely, we're going to install and set it up the way that the homeowner has discussed with you while you're doing that discovery process and setting those proper expectations from the get-go. we can't come back in. We do not want to be in a situation where we're coming back in and saying, hey, yeah, here's your rate saver battery. And they're like, great, so I'm going to be able to be off grid, right? No, that's the same story we're having today. And we don't like that conversation. Definitely need your support as a highly educated and powerful sales rep with all of the tools that we're going to be able to provide you with here.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great question, Jay, on the supply side. So on the supply side, do we foresee any challenges? The good news about walking into NEM 3 is this is not brand new to us. We're a global company. We've actually seen net metering go away in a lot of places. So Europe was the first place. They're 90% batteries right now. So every solar system has a battery on it. Hawaii, same thing. So Hawaii is, they're 30 to 40% solar on those islands, and they're 90% batteries. And so we have seen this happen already. There's even other places right now, like Indiana, where they're turning off net metering. Texas, in some areas, turning off net metering. And so this isn't like a shock. This is something we've had to deal with before. And luckily, California still on top in terms of the most advantageous place to go solar, because our utility rates are outrageous, and we are experiencing outages. I go around and train people in other states. They're shocked at the amount of our utility rates right now. And so we still are going into NEM 3 at a very advantageous time, being in California and selling in California, because this is the state to sell in. But in terms of supply, we are ready for NEM 3. So we have a 2 gigawatt hour manufacturing plant just for our battery. Distribution is fully stocked with our battery right now. And so we see no issues in supply.
And just to translate the 2 gigawatt hours into other terms, that's basically 200,000 batteries that we could start producing additionally per year.
Yep.
So plenty available now and plenty more to come.
Nice. That's always good to hear. I know it's been on everybody's mind is, will there be batteries available in October? And it sounds like everyone's prepared. So Jason, Michelle, Solaredge, thank you guys for jumping on, showing us what you got and how you guys are preparing for this. It's awesome. It looks great. I think overwhelming theme here is asking the right questions, doing the right thing for the customer. A lot more homeowners than you think are going to need batteries and storage set up. And so it's about knowing exactly what we got to do in order to offer your homeowners the right thing at the right time. Again, appreciate you guys. Thanks again, everybody, for jumping on. We'll have this webinar posted and pushed out along with the deck. And other than that, any last words, Michelle and Jason?
I just appreciate you guys so much for having us. And I know that this is a bit of a mindset shift. I'm going to echo what Jason says. We're not reinventing the wheel. You guys are already having these discussions. It's about setting the right expectations. And we're all going to get through it. But if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us as well. We're here for you.
Absolutely. We're still in the best market. We're in the first place, #1 market for solar, and it's going to still be the first place #1 market for solar because of our insane power rates.
Yep.
Thanks a lot, guys. Everybody have a great week. Stay dry. Have fun.
Thanks all. Take care.
Bye-bye.